Welcome back to Talk the Streets Pessoal, the best place to get you started with practical Portuguese so you can live Portugal at its best. Now, lots of you who have moved to Portugal may be planning on applying for citizenship, and for that, you need to pass a language test. It's called the Ciple exam, and last week I launched this video where I broke down exactly what the exam entails and what you need to know. If you haven't seen that yet, make sure you check it out next. It will be linked in the description. So in today's video, I really am giving you the inside scoop because myself and my fiance Mike actually went through the process of registering for and sitting the exam. So I'm going to tell you exactly what we did to prepare and how it went on the day. If you are excited for this video today, give me a like and don't forget to subscribe so you make sure you get notified every time I upload my awesome educational content for European Portuguese. We are trying to get to 50k subscribers by summer, so please help us out. So it's not actually that easy to find information about the exam online, which is why I decided to create these videos for you to make it a bit easier. I've actually included the link of where to register in the description as well. From there, it's all about preparation. Now, there isn't actually an official course that you can take to prepare you for this exam, but you are going to want to take some kind of course or get a tutor to prepare you to get to that A2 level where you need to be. Now, I broke down what an A2 level actually is in the last video, but just to remind you, it essentially means you need to be able to navigate everyday practical situations and be able to ask questions, understand answers, and be able to talk about yourself. I'd say you want to give yourself at least 3 to 6 months to get comfortable at that level, studying at a pretty intense and consistent pace. So obviously I recommend my own course and community, Portuguese Pro, to get you there, but there are plenty of options to get you where you want to be, depending on where you live and how you like to learn. So when you feel ready to start doing some actual exam prep, there are sample papers that you can find online. I've linked those in the description too. So I really recommend actually doing these under exam conditions. So what does that mean? It means not stopping and starting the listening audio that you are given. It means actually sticking to the time limits when you're doing the reading and the writing exam. And it means not looking words up or using your phone or a dictionary, obviously. So this will actually give you a really good gauge of where you should be by this time, depending on how easy or difficult you found it. If you found one part particularly hard, then that's the bit that you're going to need to focus on. I am actually hosting another live workshop this week where we are going to go through that sample paper because they don't provide you with any answers. So if that would help you out, head to the description and sign up using the registration link. So in the name of research, and because I can actually apply for Portuguese citizenship this year, yay! I did actually go and sit the exam so that I could report back and tell you exactly what it's like. Here's what went down. All right, so I've got everything ready to go. I've got my ID, which is my passport, and also my residency certificate, because I've been asked for that before as a form of ID. I've got a rubber, a sharp pencil, a blue pen, a watch so I can keep track of the time, and the form that says that I agree to be filmed during the speaking part. So that's everything I need, as well as the emails that were sent to me. So I'm all set to go. All right, so we've made it to the Faculdade de Letras, where we're going to take the exam. Being here for 8:30 a.m. on a Saturday feels a little bit brutal, but I think we're ready. Let's go and see what we have to do. All right, so we just came out from doing the first part of the exam. So when we got in, it was all very well organised. You go in and there's big signposts telling you exactly where you need to go based on the email that you got. Somebody waiting at the door to check your name, guide you to your desk, sit down, all nice and easy. So yeah, the reading I thought was actually a little bit easier than the sample paper that I had done. And you have plenty of time with that one, but this is a big thing. There wasn't a clock in the room. I think we assumed that because it was an exam there would be a clock in the room. Luckily I brought my watch, so you are going to want to keep an eye on the time to make sure you're leaving enough time for, especially for the writing section. So there's 2 things you need to know that we went through in the last video. The multiple choice part has to be done in pencil and the writing part has to be done in pen. So just get that straight in your head so that you know what you're doing, and make sure you bring your eraser, because if you make mistakes you're going to want to correct them. So something else unexpected that came up, make sure you have the complete name that is on the ID that you are bringing. whenever I do anything official, I will use my first name and my last name on the form, but because my passport shows my middle name, they actually wanted me to put that whole thing on there as well. So kind of weird to me, not something I've ever done before. In England we don't use our middle names, but because it's on my passport, which I'm using as my ID, it has to be on there. So now I have to send an email, and hopefully that's all going to be okay. But apparently that needs to be done, so be aware of that. So when the reading and listening was done, we had like a 15-minute break. Really, it was only time to queue for the toilet and eat a banana, but it was good to have a little break before we went in and did the listening. So before we actually sat down for the listening, we were already given our slip of paper to tell us where we needed to go and at what time for the speaking part, which is coming this afternoon. So you can save that and you know what your plan is for the afternoon. And then the listening begins. So this is definitely the more tricky part, okay? So we broke how the listening exam works down in the previous video, but just to remind you, the way that it works is there is a tape that's 30 minutes long. You're going to hear various texts twice, and then you have to answer some multiple choice questions. Now, my problem with this is I thought that the texts that were being read out were pretty easy to follow if you're at the level that you should be. However, the questions they ask you are not very intuitive. You actually not only have to know what was said, but you have to interpret the information in a particular way. So there were definitely a couple in there that I was in a doubt between two answers because they were kind of so similar and kind of any of them could be true. So that's the tricky bit about this listening exam that you need to kind of really be aware of. But in general, it was quite straightforward. You're actually allowed to write on the question sheet for this one, and they do encourage you to do that so that you don't make mistakes on your answer sheet, okay? So when I was doing the listening, I was actually making little notes on the question sheet, crossing out the ones that I knew the answer definitely wasn't, as we've talked about before. And it was actually really, really helpful to do the keywords thing, because in one of them she was talking about an apartment and why she did and didn't like it, and I made notes, but I didn't even remember after I'd heard it what I'd heard, right? And that's the way listening often works. So because I'd written down the notes, when I came to look at the actual question, I could say, oh yes, it was small or it was expensive, for example, even though I didn't really remember I'd heard it. I just knew it because I'd written it down. So that is my main tip for the listening exam. Also, we mentioned it might be quite good if you have the chance in the break to do some listening, just to get your head in the game, because if you come into it completely cold and you haven't been listening to Portuguese for a few days, that might throw you and it might take you a little while to warm up. So that's possibly another good tip for that. So that's the main part done. Now we're just got the speaking part this afternoon. So we now have a few hours free, so we're going to come back here at 3:30 and see how the speaking goes. So it's 4 o'clock and we have finally finished the day. We had about 3 hours to kill there in the middle, but there's a lovely park nearby. We got a really nice lunch, so that was good. We took the opportunity at lunchtime to do some speaking practice for this last part of the exam. So it was actually really simple, more simple than I thought it was. You go in 2 at a time. Mike was very lucky because he got to go in with me. And the guy was very friendly, very clear, spoke very clearly. And we essentially just had to have a little bit of a conversation with him, tell him about ourselves, what we like to do, day-to-day life, all of that stuff. And then before we knew it, it was over. So, fingers crossed, I think that went really well. So, conclusion from the day, it's a long day. Take the breaks. And I think the hardest part is actually the listening. So I'm going to be coming up with lots of tips and advice for you all based on this experience, so I'll be back with those. So that is the insider scoop on the Ciple exam. I hope that it was helpful for you. Please keep your requests coming in of how I can help you with your Portuguese, and I will be back next week with a quick fire practical lesson that you won't want to miss. So make sure you are subscribed. Ciao for now, pessoal!